Welcome to the Voices of Otolaryngology podcast series, where we spotlight diverse perspective and insights within the field of otolaryngology. I'm your host, Rahul Shah. Let's jump into it. Welcome to the Voices of Otolaryngology. My name is Rahul Shah. I'm your EVP CEO. I'm super excited today. I'm here virtually with my friend and colleague, Vince Lafredo. Vince, do you mind introducing yourself?
Thanks for having me today, Raul. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, Vince Lafredo. I am the Chief Learning Officer at the American Society for Anesthesiology.
Oh, that's such a humble intro. Tell us a little bit about your background, and I'll tell everyone how you met Dr. Newsombaum and I, and we had the best lunch, and how you're really an innovator in education. I'm thrilled that today we're going to be talking about the future of medical education, but let's get some credibility. Vince, do you mind telling your background a bit?
Sure. I actually started in the health science centers. I was a former vice president at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas. I left there and went to the University of Kansas Medical Center as a vice chancellor, and then subsequently was at the American Academy of Family Physicians as their vice president of education. I also am on the board of the ACCME and the Alliance for Medical Education.
And what's your background, your educational background? I think it's important for our team to know.
Yeah, I've got my doctorate in education, predominantly in curriculum and instruction. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. So Brian Newsombaum, he's the executive director of the American Board of Otolaryngology, and I were at CMSS, Combined Medical Specialty Societies meeting in the past December. And we sat down for lunch, and in a random manner, Dr. Lafredo, or Vince, if I may, sat next to us. And he just said, "Hey guys, how's it going?" And we didn't realize that he was supposed to be our moderator. And he did it in such a gentle fashion. But we had probably the best lunch either of us ever have had, because we talked about the future of medical education. And Vince, you have been on the forefront of that. Can you remember that discussion a little bit? You talked about flipped classrooms. You talked about the future of meetings. It was pretty exciting. And then we'll talk, what do you see moving forward for the next decade of medical education?
Yeah, I mean, medical education is really expanding rapidly. Obviously, the technology that we're is being introduced today is pivotal to that evolution. The other thing that really evolved education rapidly was the pandemic, when students couldn't get into the schools and had to do things online. All of the technology was there to begin with. It accelerated it. It moved it faster. And what does that mean? It means that, when we think about continuing education, I always like to think of it in terms of a continuum. Those that are in mid to late career are working from a construct of, didactic lectures and PowerPoint presentations and all of that. When we get and look at what students and residents are continuing from today, it's nothing like that. We're looking at things like at KU Med was the ACE curriculum, which is active learning, where students are immersed in the learning process. There, they had built a building, five stories. Fifth floor was interprofessional education. The other four floors dealt with case-based, problem-based learning. 36 rooms, 6 to 8 people to a room, podcast lectures. So you could see that technology is being leveraged. This whole societal change of being immersed into a culture is it's playing itself out in education, and I think that is what we're seeing today, is leveraging the technology that's available to us and building it into the construct of how we're teaching learners today. And there is no one way to do it. We have to think about the spectrum of the learner. What is someone doing out of residency? How do we have to continue their education versus somebody who's been out for a few years and continue their education? We have to personalize education and really make it something the way people want to get it. Yeah, I mean, I try to liken it to how we consume as a culture. Think about how we consume entertainment. We used to always go to the movie theater. Now we can go to the movie theater, but we can also watch that same movie for the same price or a little bit more in the comforts of our own home. So how are we consuming? How do we consume information? And and other things is the same way that people are trying to work in education, how things are being consumed there. I think that's the future of education.
Vince, you don't even need me. You can just keep on going. I'll interrupt you every couple of minutes. So go back to your KU Med story there. That was really fascinating. Are they learning? What does your data show?
Yeah, so what you see is it's competency based, right? So we're seeing that even we talk about what the boards are looking at, right? When we were talking about that collective conversation that we had, I did some work with the ABIM recently and talked about this need to, what we're doing in education, the evolution of that has to mirror what we're doing in assessment as well. We have to think about different ways to assess folks on a competency base. And so what are we seeing are higher scores, higher levels of competence, the ability for people to learn their own way and to leverage that communal aspect. We're seeing a lot further. Here's the other part, research that I've done since we last talked, a collaborative research project I've done with fellow peers throughout the CMSS organization was around how learners 45 and under learn. And what we're seeing there is when we ask them, what's their preference? What's their preference for getting information between the different types of things that they're worried about, like credit and knowledge and skills-based information? How do they want to receive it? And when we ask them these questions, we ask them to them in, do you want to receive it in an enduring manner? Do you want to receive it in a live annual meeting, live in person, or through your journal? We start seeing some major shifts in the way people are consuming and learning and growing from. Just to meet regulatory requirements, for example, over 50% want it from an online product or some type of enduring material. Maintenance of certification goes up to about 58% wanted from electronic versus an annual meeting, which is down around 30%, or a journal, which is around 4%. These types of things that I think are crucial. Some of the really key things, though, is we talk about knowledge and reinforcement. We think about that annual meeting that everybody goes to the big conferences. Well, only 16% want to get their knowledge reinforcement from an annual conference. Over 48% want it from their online, and 17%, very close by, is that scientific journal. So this data is what we're seeing. What overall is this evolution towards because they're working that way. They're doing a lot of their work that way independently. I want to do it on my own time. I want to do it in my own pace. I want to do it in the way that I want to do it. I want to take the time appropriately and the resources afforded to me the way I want to do it. Not so much in that group learning anymore that we would see in a conference. But what do we see 85% people want in a group conference? Networking, as you would think, right? Chance for me to interact with my folks. So that means the evolution of our annual conferences need to be that combination between networking and education. So that means that those sessions need to be more roundtable discussions, just like when we kick back to KU Med, the 6 to 8 people to a room, having that discussion, that immersive experience. You need to find ways to do more of that. Less of the big 300 people in a room, didactic, one person out there lectures, with PowerPoint. We have to evolve those things. They don't go away because we still think there are still spaces for those. But we need to start expanding the way we think about doing those things in an annual conference, for example.
Wonderfully said. I love your linear thought there. I'm thinking my phone is right here in front of me. We've been accustomed to reading the phone, and you nailed it, right? That's how I digest my information. Yes, I read books and journals, but you're right, a minority of the time. So many of our listeners are otolaryngologists, many surgeons, many other parts of medicine, as well as the public. So how does our interaction with technology now then morph into how we learn? You said it a little bit, that it's really anachronistic. The reason I might go to a meeting and feel stale or bored is because they're teaching me the way they did in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yep.
So in Vince's wonderful world, what would a modern day engagement in an educational series or continuing learning be? How do you reach 50-year-olds, all of us, 25 to 60-year-olds, blended modalities, but what does it look like? What are you doing with the American Society of Anesthesiology?
So that's such a great question, and it really is that sweet spot of offering a variety of resources that people can learn from, that they can attach to. But you said one of the key things, it's the continuous engagement. And what I firmly believe in is that, and what we're doing with at ASA is we're leveraging our annual meeting to be the kickoff of our information and education. So what are the things? Think about it. When you go to an annual meeting and you sit there even for an hour, there's never enough time to get all the information, all the questions that you have, all done in that 1 hour. So what about flipping it around a little bit and saying, here's what I want to introduce to you. I want to get these key concepts in these key areas introduced at the annual meeting, but I want to keep the conversation going for another 364 days. A full engagement of the learner in a continuous environment. So we introduce it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say, here's a series of content and that we're going to do for the rest of the year. And the other part about that is when we introduce something clinically, it's very specific and very detailed to the clinical work that you're doing. But there are other aspects. There's a holistic approach that we have for our physicians. And I think that's where we could take that longitudinal approach, much like we have longitudinal assessment today. We want to take that longitudinal approach in education because we want to be able to sit there and say, here's that clinical thing. Now there's a practice piece I want to teach you. Maybe it's as simple as billing and coding for that particular procedure. Also, is there something we can do to build your career? Maybe there's something that we can teach around leadership or advocacy or something else that helps you be more rounded and be more holistic in your approach as a physician. That's what we're trying to do at ASA. There are going to be things that are going to be one and done at our annual meeting. The other thing that we're going to do is we're those topic areas that and even in your world, there are things that you're going to talk about all the time. Those are the things that you want to keep that conversation going. The other thing I think we're going to see is, I always say that the days of Iron Man are this far away. Think about when Iron Man was in his lair and he put on his glasses and then he would talk to his computer and say your name and he would start flashing. We have that technology today. We are going to be doing just that. I see people being able to do procedural competencies in the comforts of their own home through the use of virtual reality and talking to their devices and saying, show me a picture of this. And it pops up and you're able to sit there and go through the procedure and grab the device that you need and in your virtual world and being able to do it. And even think about some of the communities we have. What about walking into a hospital, a virtual hospital, being able to talk to an anesthesiologist from across the country and go through a procedure that you're having, talk about it. These are types of things that are being put in place every day. And the Apples and the Googles of the world are learning from those environments in other areas. We're already starting to see these digital environments popping up from a medical perspective, and they're only going to get better. And we're this far away.
Wow, absolutely incredible. This is why I love talking to you. I never really made that connection with the
Metaverse?
glasses. What are those called?
Yeah, the Oculus glasses.
Oculus, right.
But
So you can move around and I could be drilling in a mandible. I could be using an endoscope but I could do that at scale. So
yes,
I could be giving a lecture from my office, 3,000 otolaryngologists across the world. Are you thinking about that with anesthesia? You're
absolutely.
talking about this is how you intubate. This is a malignant hyperthermia.
We're moving on. We're moving away from the procedural courses that we do right now that are just digital in nature. And our next step is we're working with a company called Symbana that does work for the simulation work for the Department of Defense. And because the engineering that we can get through can really get us down to some of those nano level abilities. But you think about even the Oculus, as you say, well, that's using a joystick. Apple has moved on beyond that, right? They've already gotten into some haptics when you could see multiple screens through the Apple goggles and you use your hands like this, they're learning from that. And, the Oculus is working on a glove. So you can put a glove on and be able to do that. So you can just use your fingertips. It's all, by the time that glove comes out, it's going to be outdated and you're going to be able to just use your hand gestures. Look at the platform we're using right now. You can use hand gestures to wave at the camera and everything else. It's there. We just got to put it all together.
I'm going to take a little side diversion, then I'll get us back on track. So what advice do you give to us as lecturers? Many of us on this call that'll be listening, we get about 5,000 to 10,000 listeners for each podcast. We give lectures in our hospital, in our community. So do your anesthesiologists. So talk to me again, in Vince's wonderful world, we have an hour lecture. Give me some advice. What would you recommend? I can't use Oculus. That's not there yet. But how do we engage our audience to even keep them awake? The mantra is what? 7 words on a slide, 7 minutes attention span. But really, as an expert using your doctorate, what do you suggest? How do we give us some tips?
So there's a couple things I would think about. First of all, I wouldn't think about doing the hour lecture anymore. I would shrink that down. Think about ways to bring it into micro learning, nano level learning. Give them something to do and to think about, and then go do. Remember, this is an immersive group, so find a way to interact. Interact with them. One of the things I like to do is have. I've used a company called StreamYard, which allows me to go live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. And
give me the name of that again. Give me the name of that.
It's called StreamYard. StreamYard.
Thank you.
Was a group that we used. And by able to go live on social media, again, leverage the tools in your toolbox. We've got groups that are growing up on social media. You've used it. People know how to do it. They go to YouTube, they go to Facebook, they go to Twitter, X, whatever it's called now, to get other information. We can use that to actually have conversations and maybe lead them to other things that we have within our organization. Say, hey, listen, let's talk about this for a few minutes. Go back and try it. Let's talk about, if you want more information, we've got stuff here in our library that you could go and dig out of and get even more information from. But by having these short interactions, it gives people a chance to interact with you, first of all, as a teacher, and that's really what they want. Interact with others around them so they can find out how they're doing it in rural or urban areas or across the country or different populations. There's that immersive experience we were trying to give people a chance to be part of it. Think about those small groups that you have when you're at an annual conference. That everybody's like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to say when you give out the object. Then you can't stop them. Once that ball starts rolling, think about that lunch that we had. The ball starts rolling, you can't stop it. So think about those small interactions. And then when you're doing something that may be enduring in nature, start with a video. I always like to start with a video, short videos, because a video I could turn into 3 formats immediately. I could turn it into an audio format. And also, as we can right now with this platform, you can have AI transcribe the words. So now I can meet those needs for those that are visual learners, audio learners, and people who like to read. So think about ways to reach multiple people, not just one aspect. And the other thing that I will add is it's always easier to teach people how to leverage technology than it is for people who are leveraging technology to go put them in the classroom and listen to a PowerPoint lecture. So you can teach people. Don't be afraid to say, well, my audience isn't used to that. No, they are. As you said, you have a phone, I have a phone. We know how to use the technology. Leverage it to your advantage, but keep it small, keep it short, make it a series, not just one big thing. You lose people quick. The sweet spot right now, as research shows, is about 7 to 8 minutes.
Is that still the sweet spot of attention span?
Still the sweet spot, but it's getting lower.
It's not my fault. I get asked to give an hour lecture at grand rounds at my community hospital. But what you're saying is, okay, fine. Let's start with the video. Maybe this is a case series, and that could be 4 or 5 minutes. Then maybe I talk for 5, 6, 7 minutes. Maybe I'll split up the group. I'll make sure there's a pediatrician, there's a family practice, there's a pharmacologist, there's a nurse, interdisciplinary learning. Let them come together, see how they treat it in the community hospital, academic hospital, military hospital, and then come back again. Is that how I think about structuring it, Vince?
Love it. That's a great structure. Think about all you just did for them. You gave them options, right? You kept it in short spurts so they can sit there and digest it. Think about it. When you get too long, even when you listen to a lecture for too long, do you remember what happened in the first 10 minutes? You don't, because you're focused on the last 10 minutes. So give them that time and then bring it all back together at the end. Put it all the pieces back together and give them a chance to talk about it. There's a lot of success in the models we've seen like that.
This episode of Voices of Otolaryngology is brought to you by
If you struggle and struggle and struggle with CPAP, you should check out Inspire. No mask, no hose, just sleep. Inspire, sleep apnea innovation.
So I'm going to selfishly keep learning from you, and hopefully my members find value in the audience. So we have grown accustomed to slides. When I give lectures, I'll say, oh, I've got 37 slides. I have 25. Are you actually suggesting that if I'm talking about a book, maybe I get a snippet from YouTube about the author describing it instead of me? Why am I the translator? Let me just throw that video in where Dr. Lafredo is talking about how to train a college athlete for 7 minutes or 5 minutes or 2 minutes.
That is such a good point. And I love what you just said about that, because we have to remember sometimes as those who are lecturing, we think we have to do it all. We don't. There's a lot of really good content out there. In the past, yeah, we didn't have all this great content and good videos and other opportunities to get information to come in. We can curate as much as we create. Leveraging other expertise, the research that we showed that when we've done this is that we used to have a model that said when I was at family physicians, for family physicians by family physicians. And then when we surveyed the family physicians, they said, yeah, that's great, but we really want it from the most reliable source. If that happens to be family physicians, great, wonderful. It's a cherry on top. But if it's coming from somebody else, even and they are the experts in this matter, so be it. Let's go with it. So I think your point of saying, can I start something and curate other information to bring in? That's what they're used to. That's what people are used to now. Getting in information. Think about that's all Twitter's foundation is on, right? Showing you quick little videos and quick little information snippets in whatever area it is that you're going to do. People are being trained to do that and to consume in that fast manner and react to that fast manner. So I do think having that plethora, if you're going to get up there and do a lecture, find ways to get interactive, and that interactive could be immersive within the group in your room, could be interactive by saying, I've got the perfect video to show you, or a perfect series of videos from different people so they can see that expertise coming in and know that they're seeing it from a really worldly view of how to get information.
Really interesting. You and I are old enough to know where we used to have a 35 millimeter Chrome. Remember, you drop it in the slide deck. Then we went to PowerPoint and it was all just written. And then people learned videos and they would put so many videos on there, it'd get really boring. And then they went back to slides. But my epiphany today is these micro videos. I'm going to go ahead and try that. I mean, that's just a real epiphany for me here. Let's talk about neck masses. Let me bring Dr. Lafredo to talk to you about his experience. Here's how you medically management. Here's some of the complications you can see. Even for 30 seconds, it just breaks up the monotony of my voice.
Absolutely. And, some of the LMSs now, they can get down to the nano level. So one of the LMSs that we looked at, what I mean by that is, let's say you have a slide deck of 70.
Can you define LMS for our team?
Learning management system. So when you go online to see a video from wherever you're getting it from, it's being uploaded into a learning management system. So a lot of times when you get a slide deck and you say, I need to get these two slides 27 and 28 out of a slide deck of 72, normally you would have to go and download the whole slide deck and go through it until you got to where the instructor was talking about slides 70, 27, and 28. Now, with proper tagging and the way these LMS systems are tagging information and content, as AI is saying, oh, that word was used here in slide 27 and 28, it can pull those two slides out and show you just those two slides without having to go through all of it. So again, it's taking it out in small nano level chunks from the big 72 deck slide deck. It can bring out those really small levels and give you exactly what you need. And where does that come in handy? In real time. Think about the real time. A lot of times when you're sitting with patients or you're sitting there before talking to a patient and you're like wanting to review something or you need to go back and think about something, that ability to get stuff in real time, real quick is real important. So we have to think about having content that can meet those needs as well. Again, by having devices in your work situation, you have the ability to go and get that quick refresher, reminder, whatever it might be for you.
We can also grab videos with our phone, right? I mean, the 10 megapixel or whatever, however many megapixel phones, right? Highly adaptable to that.
Yep.
Yeah. You are also a leader in the ACCME. Do you mind defining that? You just had a national conference. What are some other best practices you're seeing out there that could apply to the lay medical public, if that makes sense? You know, we're not educators, but we're doctors. What are you learning? What was the most exciting part, and define that for our audience?
Yeah, so the ACCME is the Accreditation Council for Continuing Medical Education. It is the accrediting body for CME across the medical profession. And thank you for bringing up the annual conference. There was a lot of really good information that went out through there to help people better understand some of the techniques and use. And a lot was what we've been talking about today. Some of the team-based information I thought was very interesting. When we think about it from this way is that a lot of times we think just our society is the only one that can give us that information, but we can learn a lot from other societies, especially in that team-based approach. So I think one of the big walkaways for me was the amount of work now that people are saying, because budgets are getting very restrictive. Employers are reducing the number of dollars spent. Again, back to my research, pre-pandemic, the average amount for a member was about $5,000. Post-pandemic, it was down to $2,600, of which they were willing to spend an additional $600 out of their pocket on average. Now take that, that's an average. So somebody later in their career may be willing to spend $1,000, someone earlier in their career, $100, that type of thing. So as resources start getting reduced, organizations finding ways to collaborate and meet the team needs in one place, I think was very interesting, and an interesting concept that we get so territorial about what we do and so competitive that we fail to realize that this is a team sport, right? We don't do this alone. We need the others around us, and we need to make sure that we are leveraging the knowledge that the others are bringing to the table. And I think that is one of the most prolific things we can do in order for economy of scale to help each other. Everybody has their place. I see it as a thing that everybody has their place and their stake in the game. How do we leverage it? How do we help each other navigate the medical system that we're in right now? Because as you know, in our current economy, things are shrinking, and we need to be able to still meet those needs with the information we can gather from around us and curate and leverage in our teams.
So at the ACCME conference, team leveraging A plus B in disparate specialties to drive member value was a theme. For example, otolaryngology and anesthesia share the airway. Why in the world are we duplicating work product? Why don't our teams actually get together to say, how do you co-manage? How do you manage that difficult airway? And part of that is you look up, you look down, you speak to your partner, and that's embedded in there. Is that what you're getting at?
Absolutely. How do we leverage all of that? You know, the ability to sit there and help each other in those situations where, you know, there's good content coming in from both places. I think the other part that we saw in that meeting was the ability we had some really good keynotes, and some of the keynotes were around listening. listening to the others in that room. And that was part of that team approach, is that we can't always sit there and think that we have all of the answers ourselves, that we have to leverage what others are bringing to the table. And I thought that was a real powerful thing for me, is to listen more when we're in those group settings, to hear what people have to say.
I'm sure people could say I would benefit a lot from listening. I mean, that's really interesting. So we talked a little bit about present state and backwards. Take me forward. Let's do 2 to 4 years. And I'm not saying 5 to 10 because it's moving too fast, Vince. 2 to 4 years, what do you see? What advice do you give? We have about 350 surgeon members that participate on our educational committees, and they have a wonderful work product called the Otolaryngology Core Curriculum. It is digital, it is online, there's some embedded videos, there's an outline format. You know, what should they be thinking 2 to 4 years from now? Where's that puck going to be, Vince?
Well, I think first Raul, I want to talk about the need to think about in the very near future. We used to say 3 to 5. 3 to 5 is too long now. Remember, the fastest growing technology that we have in mankind has ever known is AI. Have the speed to 100,000 users is faster than anybody has ever had. I think AI is going to be playing a big role, and that's why we're always, anytime we use the term AI in any of these, and I could have went with that with the ACCME conference as a big thing. Everybody wants to flock to it because it's moving so rapidly. And I think the ability for us to leverage that in a constructive way, to understand how it's evolving and to stay in touch with it so that we can leverage it. There's so many ways, whether it's the education or the practical use within the work that we do. Think about the physicians being able to just do all of their doctor's notes and other things just through leveraging AI transcripts and others that are happening within the workspace. I think those are some of the big things that we need to think about and to continue to use. I think keeping a pulse on what's happening in education today and going back and looking at, so we get away from the university settings, but a lot of times they're on the cutting edge. They see what's happening, and to stay in touch. My teams are constantly talking to those in the university setting to understand what the curriculum is doing. How are they leveraging the curriculum to meet the needs of the learners, and then bring that back into practical place for continuing education. So I think those are some of the connections that we need to maintain to do it. Some of the things I've already brought up, I think VR is going to make rapid advancements in the next 4 years for sure. And be thinking about that, how we can do that. And gamification is something that's unique. But the way we can do gamification right now is people are just starting to introduce it. But we've got a whole culture that's coming into the profession that grew up on handheld devices and gamifying everything that they did. So we have been introducing a company called Training Arcade to our members. And here's some of the cool things that we're doing. For example, my wife and others are big fans of the New York Times puzzles that they get every day, right? Well, at our annual conference, we're going to introduce Wordle and those other types of games every day. That lead back to some of the journals, some of the education that we have for that day, keywords that they might see in a certain session or topics that they're doing.
Is one of them going to be BORING? Just kidding, Vince. I had to throw it. Keep going. This is awesome.
No, but so the Training Arcade there, it's not Wordle, it's called a noodle. But for example, when you wake up in the morning, there's that word and that's looking for it, and it can tie back to the education that you're doing. These types of things I can see leaderboards at either on your website, a leaderboard, that shows, hey, here's some things that you could do. And the way that they do it, you can also unlock stages, right? So you can't get to the next stage unless you hit a certain level of competency. So
but I love that even for the annual meeting. A leaderboard. So, hey, Vince nailed it yesterday. Hey, man, Vince, way to go. What did you learn? It just creates a fun buzz.
Well, at the end of the day, right? Let's see who our leaders are. You can be talking about that at a plenary. One of your big sessions is like, congratulations for those. Maybe they get a little Chotsky for being in the top 10 or something like that. But then you wipe the board clean and start the next day. And you can do You could do a different daily winner. You could do an overall title and total session winner for the whole conference. So many things you could do. And those are fun things that introduce gamification into your space. And if you introduce it at the annual meeting, then it can continue beyond that, right? That 365 we're talking about. Keep it going. People love that. One of the things we're going to do real quick is we're going to be doing, a lot of residencies are into Jeopardy. And Training Arcade has the rights to Jeopardy. So we're going to start having a March Madness. Get our different residency programs pitted up against each other and let them go through it, and then bring it up to, and then have a playoff at the annual meeting for those that are there, or invite them to the annual meeting to have the final game. So different things like that we're talking about doing. We're messing around with. It's gonna be fun.
I told members who are listening and guess how fun you are, Vince. I'm so excited. I made some notes. I want to back up. You said the university ecosystem is fertile ground for us to learn. Many of our academicians have those appointments, those 300 plus folks. So you're saying go talk to your dean of students, go see what's happening in the engineering school and how they're learning. That's fascinating that you see that as an innovative ecosystem of education.
Absolutely, because it's a testing ground for education, right? I mean, what better place to test what you're trying to do than on students? So I used to always say, and you'll see that. You'll see a lot of really creative ways of doing it. And what I have found is that when we're able to take some of those really cool models that we see, and again, I'll go back to the model that they had at KU Med, which was active learning and competency-based assessment and evidence-based excellence in the work that the education that they're providing. You take that ACE curriculum and you can apply that directly to continuing education, right? What if I got you immersed in learning with your peers, in a virtual environment, in a face-to-face environment, and really get that robust conversation, that really good dialogue with some guidance from the instructor. All we need to do is guided discovery now in what we do in education. People they want to learn, they want to figure it out. And I think that's helpful if we can give them the key points to guide them to the answer. And we see that happening all the time in education. So why not leverage that?
Well, you've been so generous with your time. I want to give you one more question. These are supposed to be 25, 30 minutes, but I just can't stop talking to you. I'm going to give you a second to think about it because I want you to frame this. This is framed as a negative. What shouldn't we do? So it's good to know that our attention spans are still 7 to 8 minutes. I'm sincere about that because we hear about the declining attention span. So as a Dr. Lafredo, we appreciate 7 to 8 minutes is our attention span. You're saying, look, doc, don't have an hour presentation. Fine, they're giving me an hour, but don't just fill in the blanks for me. Give me some don'ts. Don't keep them sitting down for an hour. Don't rely on slides. Give me a bunch of don'ts.
You've hit on two big ones. Don't do any of that. And don't forget that you have a variety of learning. Don't forget the life. I always say the lifespan of the learner. There's not one way to do it. Don't box yourself in and say, I have to do it this one way. Always think about ways that you can reach all the learners, and don't assume that somebody who's been around for 20, 30 years learning like you and I have been can't learn the new technology. Okay, those are some of the things we don't want to do. Don't make grandiose assumptions that there are things people can't do, and don't make assumptions that we can't curate and we can't collaborate with others that can help bring in information. And don't assume that you're the only one that can speak to that particular topic or that area. The more that you bring other people into your ecosystem of education, the more validity it brings to what it is you're talking, because you're showing that you can bring people in, and it validates you. It validates the concept that you're bringing across by bringing other professionals, whether they're within your society and your line of work or from outside. That brings in really good, competent work. It'll only elevate the education that you're doing. And don't stand pat. I think the most important thing I can tell you is be agile, be willing to try new things, and don't be afraid to fail. It's okay if you learned that this thing didn't stick this one time. That's okay. Tell that to me, my team all the time. We've learned something from that failure. We're going to make it better, and we're going to be even better the next time we do it, because now we know.
So Vince, I'm going to end here, but I don't want people to hang up because you're going to be so proud of me, Dr. Lafredo. So what I'm going to do is right now we're May 20th. I'm going to invite you back in October or November because this is going to be a continuous series of learning. You have whetted people's appetite, and I don't want them to think, all right, we just got Vince for 40 minutes. So I hope you accept that offer because I think you're going to continue to learn about otolaryngology. We're learning and reflecting on what you taught us. And we hope to get this published in a few weeks. And so our members are going to have questions, Vince.
I any way I can help. You know, I will do anything for you and for otolaryngology. Anything I could do to help to make the system better, to make the education better. I'm happy to help out. Would love to be back. And thank you so much for having me today.
Miguel Ventura and Chris Harris on our team will put my email on the bottom, and people can email me questions for Vince next time.
Please.
Vince, you like that? I'm learning. We're keeping this less than an hour. We're bringing you back. We're engaging them.
That's right. One quick note, 40 minutes. What we're doing, doing our continuous engagement. We're having one person do 40-minute speeches or lectures, and we're cutting them down into 10 minutes. And now every Monday, we're going to be releasing them. So we're going to do different series on different topics. So there'll be topics coming out on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They were all recorded at the beginning of the month, and we just release them throughout the month, just like you get your Netflix series that get released once a week. Same time.
Well, I love it. We're going to have Vince's Wonderful World series. Dr. Lafredo, much thanks to you and the American Society of Anesthesiology for being generous with your time, for prepping and spending time with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Anytime. Happy to be here. Thanks again.
We hope today's episode sparked some fresh ideas. If it resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with friends. Have thoughts or suggestions? Use the feedback form in the show notes. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to follow us on social media for highlights, behind-the-scenes content, and updates. Thanks for listening. See you next time.